We're back here at the Stanford-India Dialogue, and I'm joined here by Sanjeev Sanyal, who is part of Prime Minister Modi's Economic Advisory Council. Sanjeev, thank you so much for being with us. I wanted to get into the economy. I've had a few discussions about the economy in recent months. Obviously, India's GDP has risen dramatically. I hear different stories from different people. We're here at Stanford in an academic setting where there's a lot of folks that are focused on the economy. I went to an event at Harvard where folks were trying to say India's GDP is not all that it's cracked up to be. Give me your perspective as someone on the inside.
So let me say that the economic numbers just came out for the last quarter. India's economy grew in the October to December quarter by 8% year on year. By some, 8.4% to be precise. Easily the fastest growing economy in the world by some margin. And for the year as a whole, it'll be close to 8%. Not a trivial thing when, as you know, the rest of the world is not growing. So there's no export market really. It's mostly internally driven. And under all kinds of other difficult circumstances, wars going on, fluctuations in oil prices, El Nino that we had yesterday, so the last year, that impacted agriculture. In the middle of all of that, we're still generating 8% plus growth. And you can see that in the sheer amount of economic activity that's happening. Even if you just visit India, you'll be able to see it.
That's true. I mean, I was very fortunate to get a real tour of India recently, and I saw the infrastructure. I mean, that's what's noticeable. From Mumbai to Goa, you name it, you see beautiful airports, you see bridges. It is incredible, actually.
Yeah, it's visible.
To witness. It is visible. And another thing I brought up here, and I did this panel recently at Harvard, where we talked about the fact that we do see a lot of foreign direct investment. We see a lot of states in India coming to Silicon Valley, talking to corporations. I see it firsthand. So tell me, is that part of the strategy? Has that been part of it, to have the states compete for foreign investment?
Yes, absolutely. So we want the states in India to compete, and it means that you'll see not just them be much more welcoming of private investment. India has a history of bureaucratic hurdles and so on, and I'm sure there's still quite a lot of that still there, but dramatically less than what it used to be. And a lot of the infrastructure, by the way, is being built either by the states or at some state level, right? In the end, I may be in the central government, but eventually the infrastructure is built at somewhere in the state. And I'll just give you an example of Mumbai. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Very crowded city. And basically, till this point, it used to function on 2 train lines built in the British era and 2 highways, one in the west, one in the east. And now suddenly we are building 13 new metro lines altogether. We are building a coastal road, 22 kilometers along the western side. All of this coming on stream in the next 13, 14 months. And we are building a brand new airport on the mainland. The connecting through the highway has already been opened. The bridge, it's 22-kilometer bridge to the mainland. So a huge amount of infrastructure, and this is just one city. So people may not realize that, in fact, Mumbai is the highest concentration of cranes in the world right now. Not Shanghai, not Beijing, it's Mumbai. So there's a huge amount of this going on. And the point is, we are doing this in global scale. There was a time when you built some infrastructure in India, you built some shoddy thing. We don't do that anymore. Whatever we build is world class. You go and see the new airport in, whether it's in Bangalore or the new airport that we're building in just east of Delhi, a huge new airport. So this means that for the first time we have ambitions of doing things in world class level. And it is showing through. So in the next 18 months, we will probably go past Germany and become the world's 4th largest economy. And 6 months to a year after that, we'll go past Japan and become the world's 3rd largest economy. And, we'll be unlucky. Of course, anything can happen. There can be a war or some bad thing happening. But short of that, in about 24 months or so, we will be the world's 3rd largest economy. Of course, it'll still be poor. World's 3rd largest economy with the world's largest population. So dividing one by the other means that in per capita terms, it's still a poor country. But in sheer scale, we will be the world's 3rd largest economy.
Are you using templates from previous regimes? Like here in the United States, we talk about amazing infrastructure projects that we're still benefiting from today. Airports, highways. Obviously, we stopped building in recent years, and only now there was finally a bill passed in recent years to facilitate additional infrastructure. So are there models that you've used from other
Absolutely.
countries?
I mean, the rest of Asia, at least East Asia, went through this very rapid industrialization since the Second World War. And all of them used similar patterns, an investment-driven growth, a lot of investment into infrastructure, and then also into manufacturing. So some of that, obviously, experiences are useful. Now, you can't do that forever. China, for example, has run the limits of that process, because then at the margin you begin building real estate and infrastructure that doesn't have value, because you've built all the obvious ones. So we are nowhere near that. I mean, we could do this for 20 years before we reach that phase. So we are in the phase where we are building infrastructure. Almost all of it is useful. And so that can generate growth for a long time, because not only does the building of the infrastructure generate economic activity, then it enables all kinds of other activity, because the highway is there, the airport is there, the port is there, whatever other infrastructure is there. So there's all this multiplier effect that happens from simply creating all this infrastructure.
Tell me about the big initiative that was announced at the G20 to connect India with Europe, using the Middle East, having obviously connecting it through by land and by water, Saudi Arabia, Israel playing a role in this. Obviously, we know the Hamas-Israel conflict has definitely put a damper on things. But give me a sense of that particular investment, because I know President Biden was there. They talked about, I think the number was $100 billion in investment. It was a stunning announcement. And obviously, in light of what's going on in the Middle East and Europe, things are challenging right now.
You can't take, these are projects that take a decade to build. So don't see it in terms of the last few months of conflict. Eventually these things will evolve. Maybe the route will be changed a little bit or whatever. So these are very big projects, and of course, some part of that is peaceful. I mean, the India part is peaceful, Oman is peaceful, Saudi Arabia is peaceful. Yes, at the very other end there is a problem, and then on the other side in Europe also that works. So there is a blockage in the Eastern Mediterranean because of the issue with Israel. But we'll sort it out. I mean, some adjustments may be needed, but eventually it can be done.
Is that really an economic it's beyond just the economy being bolstered by this kind of infrastructure, but is it a way just to tie India more closely with these countries? I mean, tell me about the philosophy behind such a huge initiative.
So, I mean, it's a part of the fact that India is rapidly integrated in the rest of the world. It's also playing an increasing role in the Middle East as a stabilizing force, geopolitical force. And by the way, this is a long-term project which will eventually happen. But as we speak, there are Indian Navy ships basically keeping the Red Sea open. The Indian Navy plays a very important role. People don't realize this in terms of the security of that part of the world. We don't tom-tom it as much as many other people may think, may do. But, piracy and all of these things that are happening at the opening of the Red Sea, the Indian Navy plays a huge role in contributing to that. So there is an important geopolitical aspect to it. Of course, we also have important economic interests in the Middle East. The UAE and Oman are close allies of India, as you may be aware. We have free trade agreements with the UAE, and we are talking to the other GCC countries. So we have, important economic interests. There's a large diaspora that lives there as well. So, we have important economic interests in that region. Historically, the US, and before that, Britain used to provide that stabilizing role. But increasingly, India is playing a stabilizing role in that region.
And I did hear Assistant Secretary of State Richard Verma compliment India for helping to keep those ports open and the waterways open. That being said, I mean, you guys do a lot of business with the Middle East as it is. Talk about building out Jammu and Kashmir. I know there's been a big effort to build that part of India, as well as other parts of India that could be used for tourism.
Yes, tourism is big. I mean, in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, there was a historical problem in that there was an Article 370 that kept Jammu and Kashmir separate from being integrated into India. There are historical reasons for it, which I don't need to get into, but it did mean that it was, in a sense, there was a difficulty in integrating it with the country in terms of building infrastructure, business links, and so on. So now it is just like any other state. Ladakh has been separated out into its own union territory, and so now we have something where the laws are even across the country, and any case given because of the GST and other things, we have now unified the Indian market, which wasn't. People don't realize this, that till 2017, India was not an integrated internal market. It may be integrated politically, but not economically. Every state used to have its own laws, tax regimes, and so on. These have all been integrated into one called the GST, and that has dramatically expanded internal trade in India. So a lot of that, of course, now in other ways also, Jammu and Kashmir has now got integrated into India, and this is also allowed with huge amount of infrastructure being built in there as well. Plus, in addition to that, one interesting phenomenon that has happened is that Indians have become ardent tourists. And this is showing up, of course, even in Switzerland, by the way. But in fact, inside India, there's a huge amount of tourism going up. So suddenly there's lots of money to be made. Indians are willing to pay $500, $1,000 a night for places to stay in, old palaces and other things. So if you go, for example, to Rajasthan, and there are these beautiful old palaces become heritage hotels, till very recently, you would see very few Indians paying top dollar to stay in those hotels. Now, not the case. Most of the guests in those hotels will be Indian. I mean, there will be foreign tourists as well, but it's not just an increase in ability to pay. A lot of it is about the willingness to pay. And ironically, COVID played an important role in this. So Goa, for example, has upgraded itself. It used to be a place where second, third tier Russian tourists, etc., used to go. Today, it's mostly an upper middle class Indian place, and that has upgraded the facilities because they are willing to pay top dollar for it.
What are we missing in terms of the economic story? Because obviously, we see the U.S. and India talking on a regular basis for defense and many other, in a way that I've never seen before in my lifetime. So, is there a disconnect, though, between what we see and what's actually taking place behind the scenes?
In what sense?
Well, I mean, is there more than meets the eye here in terms of...
No, I mean, the U.S. is a close friend, and we trade with them. Increasingly, there have been historical reasons why India didn't have as close a relationship with the U.S. than should have been the case. But those relationships are rapidly growing. Of course, India is... has its own interests, and we will, for example, import oil from Russia if it suits us. But yes, I mean, there is no question that India and the US are coming together on multiple areas. I mean, the US is our biggest export market, for example. There's a large Indian community here. There are a large number of American companies that have their operations in India. Most of your large tech companies do their development operations in India. So there's huge amount of integration. But I think increasingly geopolitically also, they have come together, for example, using the Quad framework. So there are many ways in which the two are working very closely together.
And what tangible steps have you made to make it easier for an American business to come and invest in India?
Well, not specifically American. We have made it easier for foreign investors into India generally, which includes Americans. And you will see a lot of American companies. For example, Apple phones, increasingly something like 25% of Apple phones are now made in India. We will soon, in the next few years, replace China as the world's biggest Apple phone manufacturer. And when it's not just Apple, because there's a whole ancillary industries, all kinds of other things that come with it. So, yeah, so to answer your question, yes, there are lots of American companies already there. I believe Tesla is exploring setting things up there soon. So, a lot of interest.
And what makes you so bullish on India, and why do you stay in the government? Why are you doing this role?
Well, I'm not a civil servant by profession. I'm actually a financial markets guy and spent 22 years in financial markets. I joined the government in 2017 as the principal economic advisor to the finance minister. I spent 5 years there, and the last 2 years as the economic advisor to the prime minister. It's an exciting time. You can feel if you live in India that this is a turning point in history, and this is an opportunity to be a part of that history.
Well, we really appreciate your time. Sanjeev Sanyal, who's with the Prime Minister Modi's Economic Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.